Yeah, I mean, nothing is ridiculous anymore given our political situation, and
Yeah.
we're facing that. But our next question was, okay, so what are the parameters? And I kind of figured out what the parameters would be. So I actually sent them an entire note saying that, so if you're ranking in terms of, for example, impressions, they're not called, by the way, TRP anymore. They call them impressions, and impressions are impressions, right? So impressions, rating percentage, reach percentage, ATS of the viewer and ATS of the universe, basically the entire populace and that. So what is the weightage you're giving to each one of these factors? They came back saying that they give the same weightage to everything, but they highly recommend that the investment should be driven only by impressions. Now, this is where it's completely mind-boggling for someone like me because I'm looking at, okay, so they're not collecting the right data, but then they're not even using the right method to take the data and sift information from it. They're not even planning the data properly to be able to derive results. We were working, so we were reviewing some of the shows and we were mapping it back, those shows, the demand of those shows back to our own data platform where we're literally picking up data from wherever we can find, or around 2 million points of data every day of shows that are watched globally across 47 countries, and out of which India is a big universe. Now, when we're doing it, we're even looking at how many times is a certain clip or a show being pirated, because that tells you demand, unpaid for demand, but that's a demand factor. But then that's not enough weightage. That cannot be as much weightage as people literally impressing their eyes upon a show. And then the confusion between all the OTT channels and traditional television is high, because traditional television, you just need to keep it on, whether you watch it or not. There's no sentiment going in there. But OTTs, the different metrics that Netflix and Amazon use to really determine how engaged the audience is, and that is yet another universe. Now, none of this is going to work. However, I came across why it really hit me hard was the impact of what these wrong numbers can do to people's lives. And it's not about advertising, it's a human interest story, because we got approached by several, there are international fan groups of a show that runs on Star TV called Ye Rishte Hai Pyar Ke, that after the lockdown, they decided they're going to crap it. So they moved it from 10:30 at night when young people, it's a younger show, it's progressive, it doesn't show women being mean to each other or washing dishes. It's a very non-traditional show. So they moved the timing from 10:30 to 9. So the fan clubs went up in arms. There are like 50,000 fan clubs with around 5 million fans, mostly young women, fighting for the show. Now, when that started happening, the TRP came down from 2.7 to 3, that was pre-lockdown, to 1, at which it is now. So Star TV scraps the show. Now these women are fighting for it. There are kids that are slashing their wrists. The kids slashing their wrists for a show, and this is scary because it's impacting their lives. They're trending on Twitter every day with 4 or 5 million tweets and retweets asking Star TV to respond, but nothing's happened. Now, when all of this was happening, we started mapping the demand impressions that we are catching globally for the show and in India to the TRP ratings, and it just didn't make sense. So what I'm trying to tell you is the way they're capturing and analyzing the data has effect on normal human life, because in a mental health situation like a lockdown, that affinity that people find towards television and binge watching is a big mental health issue.
Sure. And so I just want to explain this in two ways. So I'll get into the issue of this particular show later. I'm well aware of that, right?
Okay.
The broader reasons, you must understand why are the ratings fixed, all right? And it's basically to build revenues. Let me explain. So India is now, we have 1,000 television channels, all right? Now, if I'm a media agency or a buyer, or if I'm an advertiser, let's say I'm Unilever or I'm Procter & Gamble, all right? So essentially, I expect my media agency to make a wise decision out of 1,000 different television channels to be able to tell me where and how and when they should place their ads, all right? Now, this is a lot of work. You can actually derive it well, and you can do this programmatically. But from their point of view, imagine if they looked at 1,000 channels in terms of real ratings. I mean, they've got to do a huge amount of buy. So even if, let's say, hypothetically, you figure out 250 channels are right for this particular audience, for a mass audience, you've got to negotiate with each of them and make sure your buys happen across them, right? And if you negotiate, you know that you actually get small rates. So let's say that the typical ad rate on a channel is about $1,000 per 10 seconds, all right? And that's reasonably kind of in line. It goes from $500 onwards.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I'm a media agency, my job is to actually look at 200 channels and negotiate with them at rates of about $500 to $1,500 per 10 seconds, buy my spots and do this entire buy. It's a lot of hard work. All right, and the channels don't get very much because they're only getting $1,000 per 10 seconds. Now, enter the rating system. What I do is to say that, look, I don't want to have 1,000 channels accurately rated. Let me take 3 or 4, all right, and super rate them. So rather than giving them fractional ratings of 0.2% or whatever, let me give them ratings of 5 to 10, 15% or 20%. All right, and how do I do that? I do that, like I said, by fixing the channels or by inflating the numbers. Like you said, the meter just says that the television is switched on, and it assumes that when it's switched on, 6 people are watching it, which is also not true. All right, so they multiply these numbers, and they hence come up and say, oh, you know what, this particular cricket program is watched by 20% of India. All right, and because the other program is only watched by 2% or 0.2% of India, you have to pay 100 times the ad rate. So what typically happens is for large events, your per 10-second rate goes up from $500 up to $2,000 to even $20,000 in some cases. All right. So instead of paying $500 per 10 seconds, you're paying $20,000 per 10 seconds. How does this impact you? So from the agency, it's really fun because they don't have to cut 250 checks anymore. They have to cut 3 checks. Now, each of the checks is 100 times in size, as opposed to writing 250 tiny checks and doing all that stuff. These guys really make sure that the clients write really large checks by falsely inflating the value of that particular channel. By saying you've got to pay $20,000 per 10-second spot, my ratings indicate that. Who makes out like gangbusters? The channel makes out like gangbusters because instead of earning $500 per 10 seconds, he's earning $20,000 per 10 seconds of inventory. The agency makes out like gangbusters because he's officially getting 1%, but actually he's getting at least 10% of that through rebates and backdoor means. So he's making 10% of that. The channel is making 90% of that. And it's much easier to have a few cash cows that you milk time and again. And so essentially the deal is that I will rate you high, I will take your price high, I will extract my money by charging this from the client and taking my 10% back from you. So you see how it is, how this is fixed, because the measurement indicators, the measurement channels are owned by the agencies and the TV channels, all right? So unless you're a big guy in the TV channel, so this becomes kind of a fait accompli. You've got to fix the meters to become a big guy. And once you become a big guy, for example, we talked about Republic channel. Republic, which actually did, among other channels, has been doing the fixing. They've been trying very hard to get into the big league because they're not yet there. So they did a huge amount of fixing, and they lined up with one of India's largest media agencies to be able to do this. So they actually did this together to say, fine, I will grow your ratings and you will give me a larger share of your revenue so both of us can make out like gangbusters. So that's the reason you fix the channels to falsely increase the price so you can make a lot more from it. Now, in this particular case of this particular show that you talked about, frankly, the point would have been that if any channel believed that they could make more money from the show, they would air it. All right. So there's no reason there's no reason for a channel not to air a show unless something else has been fixed, unless some of the show on some of the channel has been fixed, or this channel stopped fixing the show. For example, most channels out there know that they've got to put a certain amount of money into distribution to make sure that they get the meters to pick them up, right? So if the channel stopped doing that for whatever reason, or if some of the channel paid more for the slot, then that money is going to go into that slot. So you must understand that what the ratings show has very little to do with reality. What the ratings show is what the television channels and the agencies want them to show for what suits them. All right. So, and it's what's really funny is the advertising agencies that are doing this, the WPPs, the IPGs, the publicists, are large public listed companies around the world. All right. Anybody should be able to open a class action suit and get them down to billions of dollars, because this is outright fraud being committed out here.
Fraud.
Yeah, it is. And the point, so once you let go of the notion that the meters have to reflect reality, they don't. The meters have to reflect how much money that channel and that advertising agency wants to make in that week. all right, then you will basically understand what this is all about. All right. It's like me saying that I'm going to change my app store rankings, or I'm going to change based on how much money I want to make from something, right? Which Google can do, but cannot do in the US because it would be sued if it did that, or if Facebook did that. So essentially saying, yeah, I'm going to place the, the editorial hire based on whoever pays me. It's a similar kind of fix that's happening out here. And all the protestations of we have great algorithms are nonsense, because the entire system is rotten from the bottom. So you have these people in the ivory tower who say that we designed this great system. You have everybody on the ground says, yeah, I can fix every bit of it that you want. And what you have as a result is people like us who have paid, for this fix, understand that you don't pay enough, you're not going to get fixed enough, and you're never going to make it to the big leagues.